Here's a story I guarantee you have never heard before. And there's a thing called 8 degrees of separation. There's coincidence. Napoleon is supposed to have said the first time is happenstance, the second time is coincidence, and the third time is direct enemy action. So even good old Napoleon Bonaparte talked about happenstance and coincidence. So here's a story, and I want you to tell me how this happened. So, before we bought this property 12 years ago, Helen and I wanted to leave suburbia and do a rural tree change. We spent 9 months every weekend getting in the car with a list of rural properties to go and check out. So about 200 kilometres north of Adelaide was a little country town called Crystal Brook. Crystal Brook. You can look it up on a map. Adelaide, Crystal Brook. And a beautiful town. Absolutely love it. If you're local, cannot recommend it highly enough to go visit. So we went to check out some properties, and on the way we had to go through Crystal Brook. Now, perhaps it's a topic for a different video, but if you've ever heard of a show called American Pickers and all the spin-offs, what I want to say is Helen and I were pickers before the term picker even existed. We would go around op shops and junk shops more than actual antique shops, and the things we would find in op shops for a couple of dollars that we either kept or turned around and sold at huge profit later, and even things we kept we later sold at massive profit. Better not go down that path. Somebody might be watching who's bought something off us. But anyway, we were pickers way back. And whenever we went through any country town, anywhere, we would always go in. So I was in London once, sidetracked Steve, haven't been sidetracked for a while. I was in London once. I went to Camden Town. And I was in it's all demolished now. Oh God, get me started. Camden Town, they must make a video about Camden Town. Anyway, we were in Camden Town, wandering through these dark, dank alleyways. There all used to be arches under the early steam railways, and their horses were in there. But anyway, and I'm going through this dank, dirty little place, and I see a pair of boots. And I can't believe it. And I pick them up, and I touch them. And they are genuine snake skin. They're python snakeskin boots. And I look at the size, and they're an American 10.5. And I put them on, and they fit perfectly. Perfect, beautiful pair of snakeskin cowboy boots. Up to above halfway up the calf. Fabulous. £10. £10, can you believe that? So anyway, I bought them. Of course, the next big thing was bringing them back through customs. And I kept the receipt that I got, because if not allowed to bring... Is there a limitation of time on this? This is a long time ago. You're not allowed to bring stuff back into Australia, and I must confess I did bring these snakeskin boots back into Australia. My excuse, if I'd been caught, I was going to say, come on, £10, they're not real. Of course they were real, but anyway, geez, I do hope there's not there's no limitation of time. You know, if you commit murder, 20 years later you can be convicted of it. If you commit a child sex offence, 30 years later you can be convicted of it. But if you steal a car and you get caught about it 3 years later, well, they can't convict you because of the limitation of time on larceny. So anyway, that is a massive sidetrack. Are you still with me? The little town of Crystal Brook. Helen and I, pickers, before there were the term pickers. We see this little shop in Crystal Brook, which is a pretty fancy looking sort of a antique junk shop. So we go in there. When we go in, yes, it's half the shop is dedicated to the stuff everyone likes to see on American Pickers, 30s, 1930s, 40s, all 50s, 60s, fabulous. But another half of the shop is dedicated to vintage clothing. Now the thing about vintage clothing, what do you know about vintage clothing? 90% women's, 10% men's. Why? Why is it 90% women and 10%? Because, quickly, women, I wore this last week, I can't wear this dress. Oh, I wore this to the 4th of July party last year, I can't wear this again. So women's clothes tend to only get worn a few times, And then, like party dresses and Gucci stuff, I don't know. But anyway, women's stuff does not get worn nearly as much as men's. And so after a couple of years, something's only had a few wearings, woman's had enough of it, gives it away to a charity shop. Men's clothes, worn to death. I wear my shirts until the collar is so frayed it looks like, I don't know, I can't make something up on the spur of the moment, but it looks pretty bad. It looks like the sails on the wreck of the Hesperus. So there you go, how's that? And my boots I wear till they're worn through, and my jeans usually suffer because the inside seam on my jeans wears out from rubbing on the saddle. So that's why 90% of vintage clothing is women's, 10% is men's. So as you can imagine, we go into this store, stacks of vintage women's clothing, hats, shoes, everything. My point is, Helen is in there a lot longer than I want to be. So anyway, I get finished and I'm sort of looking around. There's one other person in the shop. There's Helen, there's another woman, and there's a woman behind the counter. And I'm sort of looking around, I look at the woman behind the counter and I say, "Do I know you? You look familiar. I'm sure I know you from somewhere." She looks at me, she says, "No, I don't think I know you. I don't think I've seen you before." So I'm sure of it. You know, were you ever in the job? That's what you say. Were you ever in the job? That means were you ever a police officer? America says it slightly differently. Doesn't matter. Can't get sidetracked yet again. So, no, I don't know what you're talking about. So anyway, so then I go, "Maybe we went to school together. What high school did you go to?" And she says, "Blah, blah, high school." And I said, "Oh, wow, no, I didn't go there. I was the other side of the city." "Mate, what about primary school?" And she said, "Well, I went to Blackwood Primary School." When she says, "I went to Blackwood Primary School," Helen, who's going through the dresses, immediately turns around and looks at the woman and says, "Ha, I went to Blackwood Primary School." Helen has no sooner finished saying that than the one other customer in the shop, the woman, she says, "I went to Blackwood Primary School." What are the chances? The woman behind the counter says, "I went to Blackwood Primary School." Helen says, "I went to Blackwood Primary School." And then the only other customer in the store, that the other woman, says, "I went to Blackwood Primary School." And then she looks at Helen and she says, "Are you Helen Bray?" And Helen looks at this woman and says, "Yes, I used to be. That was my name before I was married." And the woman says, "I'm blah blah's sister." And Helen, "Oh my God, I lost track." So what happened is the other woman in the shop, hundreds of kilometres from Adelaide, in the shop at the same time we were, turns out she was the big sister of Helen's best friend in primary school, who, once they left primary school, went to different schools, lost track of each other. Helen used to go around their house all the time when she was in primary school. That's how the big sister knew Helen, recognised it. I'm convinced that faces in people's brains don't change over the years, but that's another story for another video. Anyway, short version is, no phone numbers were exchanged. Helen was able to catch up after, goodness knows, better not mention how many years. Helen caught up with her primary school friend, and now not only the whole primary school have all got back together, all the girls from that class, and now they meet up, have an anniversary get together every year. So that story dragged on a bit, got sidetracked a bit, but basically it's about a small country shop. We went in, I thought I knew the woman. I did not know the woman, but the woman went to the same primary school as Helen and one other customer in the shop at the same time, who then turned around, looked at Helen and went, "Are you Helen Bray? Oh my God, you used to come to my house when you were a kid." What are the chances? Napoleon would say that was direct enemy action. Napoleon would say that was direct enemy action. Well, again, we're in the middle of winter, and you would not believe today. I don't know what the temperature is, but I'm actually a bit sweaty. Middle of winter. Beautiful blue sky. You gotta love it. Love life. Cheers.